You know what? It's only 1250 each. I'll keep it at level 4. I need lots of fighters to defend. Especially because I probably can't afford. I already gave Bornholm level 5 anti-air. Bornholm. Yeah, I'm gonna need anti-air everywhere because I expect lots of American bombers. That's the problem, and these are expensive. You can build 2 air bases at the price of 1 anti-air. I'm worried if I'm gonna need some coastal forts in the Faroe Islands, and I'm worried because I'm going to need to hold the isle with pretty much the men I have there, and maybe even fewer. I may have to downsize these divisions even further. They're already very small, but as is, I can't meet their supply locally. They receive a third of the supply. I'm gonna upgrade the logistics company, so that'll be a bit less, but it means they're gonna be at like probably 70 or 75% supply currently. Probably need 5 divisions. I guess I might just have to fight it under supply, but it's kind of and that's why coastal forts would allow me to hold the island, maybe only 4 divisions. I'm not sure I can afford it though. Anyways, I definitely can't afford that many anti-air guns. Finn is going to get, or Finn has a synthetic refinery, and the Faroe Islands have one as well, and those I can't afford for those to be bombed, so I need at least some anti-air in the Faroe Islands. Finn also has a ton of industry. Although, the Faroe Islands... Shoot. Darn it. Never mind. I won't lose Finn just because they suffer bombing of their coastal forts. I will lose the Faroe Islands if they need... if I build forts and I rely on them and they get bombed to smithereens. And they also suffer damage from failed naval invasions. Yeah, I'm gonna need full anti-air there. Yeah, this is gonna take forever to build. And this is just kind of a bare minimum to be able to survive the US. This is why I'm not in the war, I'm just sending equipment material. Because to build anti-air guns so that my synthetic refineries don't get bombed. And I won't be able to import rubber consistently once I'm in the war. To reach British Malaysia. Well, if Iran capitulates, there's an easy land route there. It's actually all overland. Except, have to hold the Danish belts. If there's fleets parked there, then the Americans can cut off supply that runs through here, I'm pretty sure. But they would have to actually park a fleet in this sea province, which they're probably not smart enough to do. Possibly. I don't know. I also need synthetic refineries because I can't afford to import so much rubber. Need the Civ for factory repair due to I'm gonna suffer some bombing regardless, and for as I conquer my way south to expand the logistics network, which is incredibly expensive. I'm gonna have to upgrade rail lines and maybe even build a naval base or supply hub or 2. There's actually quite a few naval bases in the German coast. This one's only level 1. That's level 5. Yeah. Railroads aren't super expensive. I'm gonna have to also fortify the coast. I just don't have the manpower to have enough divisions without forts. I mean, even the Germans historically fortified their coasts a little bit during World War II. You know, the so-called Atlantic Wall, which was never actually that impressive. It was the equivalent of like over 1 or 2 coastal forts in most places. The worst part of Normandy, maybe 3 or 4, but the movies make it show the most fortified part of the most fortified part of the most fortified area, and they act like that was everywhere. The British landed in a different area on the D-Day invasions, and they suffered, and there was like 1 bunker, and they suffered very few losses. The U.S. stormed the very worst parts, where yes, they did get slaughtered, and then the British, I don't know why did they need to attack the heavily fortified area when they could have just attacked the lightly fortified area. I think it was something like the heavily fortified area is the most suitable place for Mulberry, and then they took Cherbourg. The Mulberry only needed to last until they could take Cherbourg. I think it was Cherbourg, right? Normandy, yeah, and Le Havre, yeah. And then yep, they secured naval bases for supply, and then they were able to push in. But Mulberries didn't last very long. They actually got wrecked by storms, and they had to keep replacing pier stuff. It was very difficult. Yeah, but I'm not the German. I don't have that kind of manpower industry. And even when I occupy much of Germany, it's going to be occupied because they're probably going to join the American faction when I declare them if I don't wipe them quick. And even if I do, I'm probably going to annex them because the AI makes terrible use of its industry. So I'm going to have a lot of non-core territory, which means I'm not going to get much benefit in manpower industry for a long time until I have compliance. What all of that amounts to is that I'm going to need to hold the coast very efficiently, which means coastal forts. And that's incredibly expensive. I need anti-air so the coastal forts can't be bombed. And I'm going to need fallback lines of land forts. So if I do get pushed off the coast, I can organize a counterattack with the divisions that got pushed off the coast first and reorganized with other divisions, and have to use lots of small divisions. So it's not all or nothing. So if I have, 4 divisions, 2 fall back, and they're already at half 4, but the other 2 fall back. And then they're on a fallback line until my reserves, which I'm going to need fast-moving, probably motorized or tank divisions, can reach. Yeah, I'm going to much stronger line of fortifications than the Atlantic Wall. I'm going to hold against American. If I join the Central Powers, I'm going to have to fight the British, and the Americans can launch Normandy-type invasions from the UK or from Anglia. So, yeah. I'm going to have to crack the nut of the British in naval invading the UK, which I was talking about how hard that is to do in this game. Especially since the AI was made tougher. It's not horrendous if you're the Germans, but if you're trying to do it as a minor this late, oh god, the British have tons of divisions, and I think they have even fortified their ports by this point. The AI does do that eventually, which I was surprised to see. Alright, is this the longer range or the whatever? This is pure cast. It'll be given to the Soviets. Doesn't seem to matter that much when converting. There was 9% efficiency regardless. I can only operate so many aircraft myself while still having some industry that isn't spent buying oil to do this line of stuff. I still need the tech for tanks. I'm just working on transport planes for paratroopers, which I'd prefer to produce modern ones because they're a little faster so they're kind of future-proof. I don't expect any real resistance in the skies over Kiel, though it might be as stupid. I don't know. I need to send spies to check out what their Air Force looks like. I'm hoping to take these guys out without them joining a faction and without a guarantee. And maybe restock, but usually after you've done that to 2 countries, the AI gets much more aggressive, I guarantee. So I can probably grab these 2 kingdoms, and then when I invade Westphalia, the Americans will guarantee it, or faction them before I can wipe them out. They're a little bigger. I might be able to do these without the paratroopers, and then I don't know. We'll see. Basically, have till the end of a month to capitulate a nation before they join a faction. Sometimes less. Couple weeks. And that's if you can get them, attack them without there being a guarantee, which means I'll have to justify nations I don't intend to invade first. It's gonna be a hassle. And that's still going to take a while. Justifications, I think, take 6 months, so I don't have long till I have to start those. Alright. Anyway, so I really need to get working on the... I mean, I really need to produce some stuff against the Soviets. If the Soviets falter in the air war, the Central Powers probably lose. Alright, I need... Let's see, I've got 2 on fighter bombers. Stockpile these, and I need at least 1 on trainers. I need to plan, I think, on a significant number of... This will do the trainers. Alright. I'm no longer in aluminum shortage because a lot of these, I think I've been switching all of them are 2 aluminum instead of 4. They're non-strategic. These are 4 aluminum. Right, and I'll leave these lines running a tiny bit longer until I convert them. Because you lose production efficiency, and because they already have part fractional construction of, and I like those to finish and have very little overflow before I convert them. I'm not even sure I should be switching the lines soon. I'm moving to more and more expensive aircraft that, which I guess does recapitulate real world history. Aircraft just kept getting more expensive. These days, Eisenhower used to talk about it like a single bomber costs as much as an elementary school. When he was giving a speech about how we spend too much on war, and then he ended up increasing the size of the military. It's like, what? The classic American politician of saying one thing and doing another. He appeals to the truth, and then he doesn't do anything. Just says the right word. I think there may have been some of that in Eisenhower. I want to like him. He did so many coups in the Third World, and he expanded military spending after talking about the military-industrial complex was getting out of control. Like, what the heck? Like, put an American president in power, they say all the right things and they get in power, and then they just... You know, you put Obama in power, and then he goes and does drone strikes in the Third World. It's like, these people need to... Maybe someone's threatening to kill him. Maybe it's like the CIA is like, we're gonna kill you if you don't do what we want. Like, I doubt it, but it's hard to explain how spineless, even these, not every politician is spineless, some are. You know, there's the crazies like, oh, it's wizard men. Are they getting like secretly replaced with clones? That, I don't know, it's ridiculous. That would be ancient aliens type bullshit. The real explanation is they were spineless and evil to begin with, and they just hid it until they got in power. That's the real explanation, not the crazy conspiracy theory stuff. But it is truly amazing how they say, oh, I'm going to reduce the military spending. They get in power and they increase it and they become a war criminal and they bomb third world countries and coup them. But yeah, in Eisenhower's day, a bomber cost as much in elementary school. Of course, that was in around 19. Let's see. Truman, he finished FDR's 44 to 48 term after getting into power through the rigged 1944 Democratic Party convention, and then FDR dying later that year, or was it 45, whatever, like within a year. And he got reelected in 48 narrowly. He was deeply unpopular, as he should have been, because he was a evil, terrible human being who immediately started undermining the New Deal and was actually a racist, even though he did some desegregation stuff. Partly because the left wing of the Democratic Party forced him to. Like the old FDR Democrats. People like Henry Agrid Wallace's faction. And that's part of why McCarthyism happened, is as a lashback against the left wing of the Democratic Party. Republicans did it, and they often target the Democrats. It's like, oh, you're communists, and so they destroyed the left wing of the Democratic Party. And the Democrats didn't really recover until JFK, and then JFK was assassinated. And LBJ was a lot more right-wing. He was like another Truman, who he honored some of JFK's legacy, but he got the message and moved to the right after JFK was killed. And then he did the Vietnam War in particular. And then there hasn't been a Democrat with spine since LBJ. So, LBJ was not... He had no spine since JFK, then I guess you would say. There hasn't been a Democrat with a spine since John F. Kennedy. They've all been spineless war criminals, and the Republicans have been usually openly evil even before they came in office. Reagan, evil. Nixon, evil. And he ran on racist dog whistles, both of them did. Nixon actually, there were some Nazi, not neo-Nazis, there were literal Nazi collaborators who worked in Nazi Germany in World War II, who got involved in the Nixon campaign. To his credit, when he found out that they were involved in his campaign, he kicked them out of his campaign. But the fact that people with that would be drawn to his campaign in the first place, even if he did purge them, like he said, I want nothing to do with you, you're vile. Nixon was not a Nazi, even though he was a bad person. These are people that the CIA had smuggled into, like, rural Michigan and stuff, and Wisconsin, and hid in little suburban communities, sleepy little quiet towns where no one knows their neighbor. And they had been collaborators with the Nazis from parts of Western Ukraine and Poland and Romania and stuff, Czechoslovakia. People who had been responsible for killing Jewish people and producing pro-Nazi propaganda and reporting on their neighbors. They were terrible human beings, and they rightly feared retribution in their countries, and the CIA smuggled them out of Eastern Europe before the State Department, which was actually hunting these people and trying to put them in jail. Before the State Department could catch him, they actually hid him from the State Department and had to apologize later when the State Department found out. But in FDR and even Truman's day, the State Department wasn't evil like it is today, and they actually did hunt the Nazis, as did Mossad in the early days. There were people who tried to find these Nazi collaborators wherever they hid. The French were pretty aggressive about it. The British actively protected a lot of them under Churchill, but then Churchill left office and he lost re-election, and the Labour government was at least a little better about it than the Conservatives have been. Churchill actually said, oh, what if it had been me? If we had been on the losing side, they'd be hunted. It's like, you wouldn't have gassed civilians, right? Except he actually historically did want to gas civilians, and did do it once in northern Russia when the British invaded the Soviet Union after World War I. They actually gassed a whole village near Archangel up here. This is the British, Canadian, American forces invaded the Soviet Union using this port as a base. And I think this one in Onega. They marched down and they got about here, I think it was, and then their front line stagnated. They were running out of supply and they didn't have a good plan how to win because they didn't have the numbers to hold most of, this Soviet territory. And so they just held this tiny bit of land, and then they eventually, the public was against it to some degree. There was a lot of critical news coverage. Why are we fighting in the Soviet Union? They eventually withdrew and pieced out of the war. It's a war, but it is invasion that never talked about. And Churchill, who was not the leader of the UK at the time, he was just a minister. He had been working on chemical weapons as part of a secret British project, and he decided he wanted to test them in the field, and so he tested them on a village near Archangel, and he gassed 1,000 civilians to death. Or tried. They didn't all die, that's the thing, because the chemical weapon didn't work well because of the humidity. It was really sensitive to high humidity, and so they concluded the test was a failure, but hundreds of people died due to this nerve gas agent. It was supposed to be an improved version of the mustard gases used in World War I. It was an early nerve gas, not as effective as the ones that exist today. And that was Winston Churchill. He was a monster. So yeah, when you talked about if I'd been on the other side, they would hunt me and put me on a war crimes trial, they probably would have, because he actually did gas civilians, except the Nazis wouldn't have cared. But if the British had lost to an actual democratic power, I don't know, US but in Europe, or if it had been US against the UK or something, yeah, they probably would have put Winston Churchill on trial, because he probably would have committed war crimes like the Nazis did. Not as bad, but he was a terrible human being. So he raised money for the defense funds of several Nazi generals at the Nuremberg trials. He actually wanted them to be acquitted. He tried to pressure the US government to drop the charges against some of them, and FDR said, not FDR, he was dead, sorry, Truman, to his credit, said no. And the US Secretary of State, I forget, it was some old FDR appointee, said no. I think it was, or was it the Deputy Secretary? Anyways, the person who was most responsible was actually an FDR Democrat, and he said, no, we're not going to drop the war crimes trials against these people. And then Churchill lost re-election, and he was no longer the leader of the UK. And I don't remember who came into power next, but he was much more ethical than Churchill. A better human being. Alright, production lines. April 4th, this finishes. Trainer fighter bombers. Usually a reasonable number of trainers is 1 for every 4 wings. You train a wing up, setting a specialized air wing that's just the trainers. Then you set it to normal, it gets replaced with the better aircraft. Then you train another wing up. I'm not sure if the game auto replaces. May have to set the trainers to obsolete for that to work. If I just enable, well, that's easy. I just hit obsolete, but I'm going to get notices. Oh, you're producing obsolete aircraft. I'll test. I'm not sure. It'll go for the best designs, and I'm not sure if it considers this to be a better design than this. Air attack 40. 43, air 8. No, yeah, it probably does. But stats, I'm hoping it does. If it doesn't, I'll have to mark these obsolete so that the game decides to replace them. It'll switch the pilots into these aircraft. I don't like notices on the top of my screen. Once I've worked through these, I'll probably just mark the train as obsolete so I don't have to guess later if it'll switch them. So I need another line of fighter bombers is the point. Advanced fighter bombers, mark whatever. Why is this only 94.35? It must not have had 100% efficiency when it converted. Okay. 4 ones, a fighter bomber, 1 of trainers. I think I can reduce aluminum imports again. Good. Even these 8 aluminum things aren't sustainable. There's going to be more competition for aluminum purchases soon, and it's going to be like, you'll get 6, you'll get 5. That's what it was before. For some reason, unless the AI actually started doing aluminum prospecting decisions, I doubt it. The AI almost never does that. Bump the priority of the fighters here. Because, the Soviets need fighters more than pure cast at this point, I think. Especially since I'm going to provide the cast with my fighter bombers. They need escorts for some of the sometimes very old tactical bombers they're using. I'm also going to have to increase oil imports soon, so I won't be able to keep producing aluminum purchases. In fact, I might need to buy another oil. But I'm currently burning more oil than I buy, so a single refining tech would fix that, of course. But I have certain techs I'm trying to get to as quick as I can. Looks like this is all the... No, there's also the scout plane, which finishes on April 3rd. 3 a month, so it's 10 days per scout plane. Next one completes in 10 days. So a little longer in 10 days. I can wait for another. Let's see. April 6th. Like all the women shortages are applying the scout plane this older nav right now. Alright, let's just plan ahead with the oil. I need it for a little while. Maybe I'll be able to get the refining tech eventually, but I just have more important priorities than not buying that much oil. Trying to minimize wasted production. Min-maxing the... Of course, it's probably stupid. It's like a fraction of a fighter. What else am I gonna do? Oh, there is one thing I can do. Let's rotate divisions down on Narvik that have finished their winter training and rotate up new ones. I've been pretty sure some of these guys have been there a while. These guys can join that area. Or actually, if I do that, there's too many divisions there. Go there. 6E. Hold on. These guys aren't done with that, but it should be multiples of 3. And so I need to send 2 more guys to the army of Jutland. I should just pick the guy division with the least winter acclimatization. It's not worth sending division all the way up. Narvik. They only need like a little bit. Trying to get everyone to also to Narvik. Got to assemble these guys. 13. Yeah, I'll probably rotate more in. Or maybe convert those to paratroopers. It would require some expansion of the division. And I'd have to wait till they were regular and they would drop all the way down to maybe even green. I'm not sure how much experience they lose converting from infantry to learning how to jump out of airplanes. In Narvik, apparently. They'd be doing it in the cold. Well, they definitely get used to learn how to fight in the cold there. I'm not even sure it's possible to jump out of a plane in such a cold climate. You'd probably get hypothermia and die. It's just not possible to insulate yourself well enough. Ah, the volunteer forces have returned. Under Leshley. I should have done this earlier, but just gonna merge them into here. And we don't need these guys getting high priority on the mats and rifles. Just turn them to reserve like cav. They're not going to see combat again for a while. Join the reinforcement. They can march to dense if port defenders that are really pressured. Given how badly this guy's got massacred, I don't think I'm gonna try and hold the Jutland Peninsula with such a tiny division. I probably need some slightly better ones here if the Americans join the war unexpectedly. They don't have anyone in Colding or whatever, so probably do have time to bring in real infantry. But it's going to be the army of Jutland probably is going to defend there. Anyways, Cav Reserves doing their Cav Reserve thing. So, much as I like this, having Leshley, it's just unassigned, so it'll be another 2 weeks. He can be assigned to anyone and to anything. And he doesn't have any logistics skill. They can keep using Jacobson. Or we could apply this Ivor Lovenbalk guy instead. Defense. Yeah, he's always worse at planning, and these guys don't plan. No. Actually, Carl Jacobson, for his logistics skills, should be in charge of this. And this is only 2 divisions, only the Cav guy in charge of them. I'm sure I'm not going to suffer supply logistics issues in the 2 weeks in the middle of April, maybe in the winter. Got 6 more divisions, they'll join this. But, oh yeah, I can start. I have just about enough manpower to start a division to send to Ethiopia. I do have enough manpower, but if I finish a ship or want to Next ship finishes, is it April 14th? At least 7 days from now, so I'm guaranteed to get another 500 manpower. But I have 3 of them. Yeah, I'll wait a little longer. But yeah, I'm going to start training, I guess actually the reserve version here. There might not be enough of this. I may need to create a training version with, I will. Not even a question. They can at least use submachine guns. I don't have enough rifle ones for training such a large division. When did I recommission those? I haven't done enough with the templates in a while. I don't use these guys because it's on all my artillery, the Soviets. And I did some less infantry, more artillery. So with limitations. I'm not even gonna bother figuring out what I should delete right now. Just mark it decommissioned for now. You know what? I can leave that. And this is a very small division. Extremely small divisions. They can man forts and stuff. 251's off attack, though. They're still better equipped than, say, the Island Guards. Or man front lines. Point is, yeah, with enough rocket artillery to produce, because they use less steel. Steel is in critical shortage. Tungsten is a little more available. So I did it to shift demand from steel to tungsten. Well, now I'm actually running a tungsten shortage. At some point I must have... When did I... Production lines require 10. I'm only getting 5 of the 8 from Moya, that's why. Can I borrow Teesland? Where the heck is... Okay. That's far from anything. No one's messing with them. Completely neutral country. I'll buy tungsten from them. Yeah, now I'm only at -3 tungsten. I have successfully reduced my steel demand, but I'm buying as little as 5 steel. Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan. which is not too close to flipping colonist. And it can be conquered. Doesn't really matter if we get it from Saxony or Tajikistan, does it? The steel. Probably more competition from the Central Powers with Saxony. We'll get further away. Because proximity helps a little with trade influence. Alright, factories for construction, factories for oil imports if necessary. Yeah, and relatively soon I'll be able to start divisions to go to Ethiopia, and I'll send them, since that's a hot area, there's no point cold acclimatizing or anything. And I still haven't started training these. Oh, that's what I can do. How's the weather in the Lower Baltic? It's usually clear. I need to start training these casts up. They're pure casts, but there's not fighter bomber casts, but there actually isn't much or any aircraft in the Ethiopian highlands. We do get storms this time of year, seems like, but yeah, I'll fly some bombing runs in Gambella. Hope the Somalis finish this little war. Train up my air crews, maybe get an ace if I'm lucky. I think casts get aces just by doing bombing runs. I don't think they need to shoot down fighters. If they do need to shoot down fighters, my fighter bombers would be a great source of aces. Which is another reason to do them. They trade extremely well with fighters, and they do ground missions. They probably generate aces faster than pure fighters or pure casts, especially ever would. Currently, I only have 45% bonuses, but I'll be 70% bonuses to air support with a change in my air spirit. And I forget if there's something that increases air support mission efficiency. Nope, actually it'll only be 70% bonuses. I said 75 before, just 70. But that's still an amazing bonus. All the stats. My casts or fighters, it doesn't matter if they're fighter hybrids or cast hybrids, or if they're just actually pure cast. But as long as they, pure cast with rocket rails, they have enough agility to buff up to a really high number. Just instead of, but if you give them guns, they can also defend themselves. Pure rocket rail ones would be really hard to hit, and actually hit the ground divisions harder, but it's not just a matter of shooting down stuff. It's also a matter of disruption negation, which is always speed, air attack, and air defense. Agility doesn't help with that. So if I did something like this, it would have great agility. It wouldn't actually get shot down, but with its pitiful air attack and air defense, it would suffer heavy disruption. Well, even with a 70% boosted, it would suffer some disruption, and it would be less effective at actually bombing ground targets. Do that. It might actually be worth it. A pure rocket pass, just because the agility is so high. That won't help against divisional anti-air, but it'll help against enemy fighters massively. Alright, electric torpedoes done.